Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to do a video on the record label, which for many vinyl collectors is a very important part of collecting records, because the label itself will give you an indication of which country it's from, which pressing it is, how rare it is, collectability and all that good stuff, as well as obviously the condition of the sleeve and the condition of the vinyl itself. But the label is vital, and it's got a treasure trove of information if you look for it. And you know, we could talk about design, which I'm going to talk about a bit, talk about the level of imagination which has gone into some of these labels, or lack of, should I say. It can be a thing of beauty, or it can be an extremely dull label, and I'll show you both extremes there. Some of them are interesting, some of them are not so interesting. Some of them are cheap and remind you of budget labels like MFP and Fame. I know, James Griffiths, you're fond of the MFP label, but to me, whenever I see it, I avoid it like the plague. So I'm going to show you a few labels. I'm going to end up showing you my favorite 10, but I'm going to go through quite a few other mostly generic record labels from various record companies and sort of talk about their pros and cons and how good they are. This is the first single I ever owned. It's not actually the single because I lost it and I had to re-buy it, but it's ABBA's Name of the Game on Epic. This is a very dull sleeve, but it's slightly redeemed by the orange matching single sleeve, no picture sleeve. I was disappointed by in retrospect, but at the time I was happy to have my first ever single, ABBA. But Epic, I'm going to give that a 3 out of 10 because it's not a very exciting label at all. Now, Brotherhood of Man, I had this Figaro single, and again, this is not the original because I lost it. Actually, to be honest with you, I turned it into a Frisbee. And then later on I regretted doing that, and then I rediscovered Brotherhood of Man and rebought this video. But I always quite like this pie label. It's annoying that my copy of it wasn't missing the middle, but a lot of singles these days are missing the middle. Non-UK singles, I would hasten to add, because most of the UK ones have the middle in it. But I like the colours of that pie label. The first single I ever bought was Mull of Kintyre, and I remember at the time it was not in a picture sleeve, so this is not the original single I bought, and it's on the Capitol label, which is, I think you'll agree, is a pretty dull label. By the way, I'm going to give Pie a 4 out of 10 for their label, and I'll give Capitol a 5 out of 10, because as a label it's not very good, but what's quite interesting about Capitol is there's so many variations from the early 60s Capitol labels with the rainbow variation, and then through to the purple Capitol. I've got an example of this purple Capitol to show you from George Harrison, sort of late 60s and 70s. That was quite common. And then you've got things like the Beach Boys on orange Capitol label, which is not very interesting. I won't show you that. But I'll give it a 5 out of 10 because of the variation. Now, RCA, I'm going to give this a 2 out of 10. This is a Bowie album. And it actually came on red vinyl, Diamond Dogs, but the label is so boring that even the red vinyl doesn't really save it. It's a terrible label from RCA. No imagination at all, just one colour. And when you pick up coloured vinyl, it is important that the label is at least memorable, because otherwise it doesn't look very good aesthetically, should we say. Now, I'm going to give RCA a 2 out of 10. CBS, I'm going to give it 2 out of 10. This is from Dylan and the band, Live 74. Terribly unimaginative record label, this. Don't like it. Some of you might have a soft spot for it, but I think it's quite dull. It's a 2 out of 10 for CBS. A&M, another dull record label. This is Supertramp. Most of their records were on the A&M label, and it's pretty uninspired, isn't it? It's going to get better, don't worry, but it's not off to a brilliant start with some of these early ones. Polydor UK, this is the John Lennon, Yoko Ono, Milk and Honey. Polydor UK label is with the bright red is pretty ugly. I never liked that label. But in the European Polydor, when it's got a slightly off-red colour, it's more pleasing to the eye, in my opinion. So I'm going to give Polydor a 2 out of 10. I give A&M a 3 out of 10. Atlantic, this is AC/DC, great cover, but again, the record label is pretty unimaginative. There's 2 colours there. I mean, it's not terrible, but I'm going to give that a 4 out of 10 for Atlantic. Columbia, a Dylan record saved. I'm going to give this, I'll just show it to you. I think it's better than the CBS. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 for Columbia. RSO with Clapton, Derek and the Dominos also on RSO with this animal. I've never really liked that sleeve at all. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Again, some of you might be thinking, you're slagging off my personal favourite. Sorry if that's the case. Now, Genesis got a few of their records, and some of them are on a slightly odd label, which is actually part of the Phonogram group, and it's called the Charisma label. And it's got characters from Toad of Toad Hall or Alice in Wonderland or something like that, and it's quite imaginative, but I don't really like it, if I'm honest, so I'm going to give that one a 5 out of 10 because it's at least making an effort. Vertigo, also another part of the Phonogram group, who feature on my some of my Dire Straits records and also my Status Quo records, and that's quite an interesting one because it's got this sort of couple of UFOs there in the sky, and yeah, I'll give that one a 6 out of 10 because they're making an effort. And Polar, which was ABBA's label in Sweden. ABBA came out in Epic in the UK, but in Sweden it always came out on the Polar label, and I like the label here. It's quite neat. I'm going to give that a 6 out of 10. And then Motown is next, and the main records featuring Motown in my collection are Stevie Wonder, and I think the Motown label works pretty well because I like the colours, and yeah, that's quite pleasing to the eye, isn't it? I'm going to give that a 7 out of 10. Then we've got another similar coloured one, which is Blondie, and they always came on the Chrysalis label, and I've always liked this label as well. Again, colour-wise, it's similar to Motown in a way, and oh, crumbs! And I like the butterfly on there, quite neat. Sorry about that. So that's Blondie, and then we've got, before we get into my top 10, we've got Blue Moves, which came out on the Rocket label, and I think it was fairly short-lived, this design, maybe just on this record, and it's reasonably interesting. I'm going to give it, what did I give it? 5 out of 10 for Blue Moves. So that's that. Now we've got Wonderful Christmas Time, which came out on the Parlophone label, so that was obviously the label the Beatles were on originally. It's not very imaginative, is it? I'm going to give that a 4 out of 10, despite the fact that it was an iconic label for the Beatles. Now we're into my top 10, so we're going to start off with Led Zeppelin, and they made their own label I think it's starting with Physical Graffiti in 75. The Swan Song label, which I don't think any other records were on this label apart from Led Zeppelin, but I could well be wrong there. Certainly in my collection, the only records featuring this label are the Swan Song, the Led Zeppelin albums from Physical Graffiti onwards. So that's that one. Then we've got the original EMI label, which this is a Scott Joplin. I know this is quite a simple label, and you might think, why am I giving it an 8 out of 10? I gave Swan Song an 8 out of 10, by the way. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 because I think it's quite well designed. The fact that the EMIs there are taking up half the side, quite like it. And you might famously remember in Britain the Sex Pistols single "God Save the Queen" was originally on the EMI label before EMI quickly ditched them. And this Greek copy of "Let It Be" is interesting because it's also on the EMI label. I'll just show it to you, slightly different colours there. That's quite interesting. So that's the EMI label, 8 out of 10. Then we've got Geffen, which is David Geffen's record label. Double Fantasy was on this label. This is my beautiful Japanese copy. And I just love this sleeve. I think it's a great looking sleeve, always have done. And a couple of my Neil Young records are on Geffen as well. I think Donna Summer was on this label, but I don't have any records of her. I do have one on Geffen, I think, yeah. So that was 8 out of 10 for Geffen. And then we got the Rolling Stones, when they came out with their own record company in the early 70s after the Alan Klein departure, and they came up with this great design. This is mainly a yellow, not very interesting label, but then the logo, the tongue logo, is on there, and it's been on every Stones record from Sticky Fingers onwards. This is a compilation from the mid-70s, and up until Undercover, I think every record came out on that famous yellow label with the tongue. Now we've got Warner Brothers and the famous Tree. They've got a couple of labels, but the one I'm going to show you is the Tree one, because that's the best. Looks a bit like the Hobbema painting, but it's actually slightly nicer, if anything. And the best copy of that tree-lined Warner Brothers label is my Badfinger Wish You Were Here on green vinyl, which just looks beautiful, don't you think? It's just lovely. And it's a good label. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. Joey Molland, obviously, we've just lost, R.I.P. Joey. So that was 8 out of 10 for Warner's. Then we've got Jet. I think just featured on ELO Records, but I might be wrong again. And I love this label. It's a bit like the 20th Century Fox film thing in a way, with the searchlights, isn't it? So, but that featured on most ELO records up until this one, Secret Messages. And then we've got the Dark Horse label, George Harrison's label, which he designed, or he got someone to design for him based on his idea. Nice inner sleeve, and it's a nice looking label. And all of George's records appeared on the Dark Horse, as did records from Splinter and this one from Attitudes on the Dark Horse label, which was fairly short-lived, other than being as a vehicle for George Harrison's solo work. I love that label. I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10. And now we move into my top 3. Now the Island label, we could do a separate video on the variants on the Island label, but my copy of John Barleycorn has the pink Island label, which I won't show you because it's not very interesting. My copy of Shortcut Draw Blood has an alternative Island label. Again, in the interest of time, I won't show you, but I'm going to show you my favourite Island label, which was the original, not the original, but an early one with the island and the sun and the tree. I think it's just beautiful, and I was very pleased to find this 82 record still using the old Island label. So I'm going to give that a 10 out of 10. I think it's absolutely beautiful. Now we're moving in. This is my number 2, and it's Apple, the legendary Beatles label, and this is Badfinger. And obviously many Beatles albums featured the apple, but Badfinger were also on Apple for a few years, and with the sliced apple on the back. I think it's a really clever design, and I love it to bits, and also all the other different coloured apples which you can get on various solo albums. Number one, now this might surprise you, but this is going back a bit. This is from my dad's collection of Gilbert and Sullivan. This is a double record collection. And this came out in the 50s, and this was on his Master's Voice, which was a subsidiary of EMI, or a label within the EMI camp, and a bit difficult to get out of the sleeve. But this is on that beautiful dog listening to the old gramophone system. His Master's Voice is what HMV stands for, and that still is the emblem for the HMV record shop. And but I was very happy to find that on an actual record in my dad's collection, which I've now inherited. So that was some of my favourite record labels, and some not so good. And this is my top 10. And I hope you enjoyed that, and don't expect you to agree, but record labels are always a source of interest when I'm in a record shop. It's more or less the first thing I look for, along with, you know, whether all the goodies come with it, like the original inner sleeve and the lyric sheet and stuff like that. But anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.